Hi, I'm Mark Laux, Extension Weed Scientist for Ohio State. I'm standing in a field of soybeans that has a pretty nice population of water hemp here. It's towards the end of July. We've come down to a complex of about 5 weeds that are really still giving us fits and are going to continue to be problems for us. Horseweed or mare's tail, giant ragweed, common ragweed, and then 2 pigweed species, water hemp, and then also Palmer amaranth. And so we tried to get a lot of information out in the past few years about preventing infestations of these weeds. Palmer amaranth and water hemp are problematic for a number of reasons. They produce a lot of seed. They have a lot of variability. They tend to develop resistance to anything that you use. Post-emergence on them after about 3 or 4 uses of that herbicide. So one of the best things you can really do for your farm operation over time is prevent infestations of both water hemp and Palmer amaranth. Now at the end of this video we've got some slides showing you some ID characteristics to help you out there, and also a link to a YouTube video that's really good, so I'm not going to cover that really too much. What we're emphasizing for prevention of these weeds is the first time a lot of people do see them, especially when it's a new infestation, is this time of the year when they poke through the soybeans and they've escaped herbicide programs. Most of these populations are resistant to both ALS inhibitors like First Rate and Classic, and also glyphosate, and water hemp is increasingly resistant to herbicides like Flexstar and Cobra Site 14 herbicides. So scouting this time of year and pulling out plants can really go a long way towards preventing you from having no problems. Both these weeds can produce upwards of 100,000 to 1 million seeds per plant. So you can take an infestation like this, which obviously got started probably a year or 2 ago, and once you're in a situation like this, and all this goes to seed, if it's allowed to go to seed, you're just going to have a really big mess here that's going to cause you problems for a number of years. So we advocate at this time of the year going out around your soybean fields, especially because you can see what's going on in the soybean fields, whereas you really can't in corn. Take some extra trips around your field starting now through harvest. You can use some binoculars if you need to. You can possibly use a drone, right? And you're essentially looking for something besides giant ragweed and mare's tail, which are other 2 late season offenders. What you're trying to do is pull them out before they produce seed. In this population, for example, and most of the populations we've found, this time of the year really, especially if there was a residual herbicide used in the field, it takes them a long time into late summer to produce seed. This field actually didn't have a residual on it, which is one of the reasons there are so many here. But there's a lot of little green seed on these plants and the seed heads, and both these pigweeds, they're mature when they turn hard and black, and they're really, really small seed. So the goal is to pull them out before they produce mature seed. Ideally, you cut them off below soil line. And we'd like you have you haul them out of the field and burn them or compost them, but at this point of the season, if you at least pull them out or chop the upper half of the plant off so it doesn't produce near as much seed or something like that, you're still way ahead. You want to look at a couple places that you emphasize a couple places where you might have more of an infestation. Okay, if you have manure spread on a field, you can have greater potential for Palmer amaranth and water hemp. If it's an area that floods from a creek or stream or river or something like that, it can flood from a field that's infested. You can have them come in an area like that. We have seen both these weeds come in on new plantings of crep and wildlife type seeding, so you want to scout those as well. Or if you know it's in the area, if you have other growers in the area that have this problem, you're going to want to check roadsides and check your fields and maybe pay a little bit more attention. In corn, if you're because you can't really see what's going on, it's just a lot harder to walk and scout and pull plants. If you're in a combine harvesting corn and you come across a patch of pigweed that doesn't really look like Redroot pigweed, which is our other typical one, you might want to stop before you blow that through the combine and infest both the combine and blow it out through the field. Kind of figure out what it does and figure out if you want to pull those out or what you want to do with that patch here. You know, again, looking at a field like this, once all these produce seed, somebody comes by through here with a combine to take these off, you know, they're going to spread that seed much more widely, and then that combine's going to take it probably to the next field, which is one of the most common ways that it spreads. I would say if you ever have any questions this time of the season through harvest on ID, you're welcome to send us photos at slaux.1@osu.edu. Anything we can do to help you out in terms of identification and make sure if you think you have water hemp or Palmer amaranth in a field, get that identified and then take some steps to really pull it out. This infestation gets to be to the point where it gets a little bit difficult to pull them all out. I would say, having said that, you could have a couple people probably walk this stretch. It's only about 30 feet wide, walk down through there and knock all these, you know, cut all these plants off, and it'd probably be one of the best things they could do for their profitability. Our thinking on Waterhemp and Palmer, these are two weeds that will reduce your long-term profitability, and you'll be battling various types of herbicide resistance also as you try to manage them over time. So really, just keeping them out of Ohio crop production, out of your fields, is one of the best places to start. So you can use a number of characteristics late in the season to identify Palmer, Amaranth, and Waterhemp. You certainly have the advantage of having the seed heads, and of course what your overall goal is to identify those particular species and then take them out, plant any plants out of the field before they can produce mature seed. Palmer Amaranth, you can use a number of characteristics to do this. Palmer Amaranth has the long petioles and a smooth stem most of the time, and sometimes a watermark on the leaf and like a diamond-shaped leaf, but they also have these long seed heads that really are not easily confused with anything else. They're male and female plants, and the females have the seed, and they're the ones that you, of course, need to remove, and they're bristly to the touch. The well-developed seed head, if you run your hand on it without a glove, it almost cuts your hand, but it doesn't have the long spikes like spiny amaranth can have down in the plant, so that's a different characteristic. This is what a field of Palmer Amaranth might look like this time of the year with seed heads from the field. And again, it's if you're looking at a field late season and trying to figure out, do I have giant ragweed or mare's tail out there, or what's out there, based on those two being our two biggest offenders, usually I think it's pretty easy to tell this plant from any of those with some binoculars or visually from the road. Waterhemp has a smooth stem and more of a elongated leaf, and a much more varied seed head. There's sort of a lot of variation to how it develops, but it doesn't have those long spikes laden with seed. It has more of a seed head with multiple branches that have seed heads on them with a lot of variation in color. Waterhemp especially can be all over the board in terms of the color of the seed head. You can look at a field like this one and they can be extremely reddish, or they can be more on the green side, but you can see from a distance, these look pretty substantially different than the Palmer Amaranth. Redroot pigweed and smooth pigweed, which have a rough stem and more of an ovate leaf and really don't have the long petioles, tend to have more of a condensed seed head. You can see the top of this. You might look at this and think, okay, this might be a Palmer Amaranth, but really they tend to be this sort of compact seed heads with a lot of little fingers coming off of them. And again, you can have quite a bit of variation in color on the stem late season on redroot and smooth pigweed. So this is what it might look like from the edge of the field. And we're not that concerned about redroot pigweed. Of course, certainly there has been some resistance to various herbicides in redroot pigweed in Ohio, but it hasn't been as explosive as the Waterhemp and Palmer have. So while this certainly isn't a great situation, it doesn't raise the same sense of alarm that an infestation like this of Waterhemp and Palmer Amaranth does. You can see on the bottom of the slide there more resources. We have a great couple-minute video on our YouTube site on how to identify pigweeds. And of course, if you need any other information from us on identification, be sure to give us a call or send us an email.